Hi again, and in this video we'll talk about horseback archery on a horse, as it was intended and as the name implies. So, what is a horseback archery and how is it different, and what are the challenges, and how is the modern version of it differs from the what it used to be in the past. We'll talk about it briefly in this video. So one of the obvious challenges is how do you control your horse when you shoot, because when you shoot you obviously use your both hands, as you can see on these images right here. You have to use both hands and you can't hold the reins at the same time, so you kind of have to throw them hook them on a saddle and let the horse ride. And the way we do it in modern day, we create these tracks. We kind of mark them with with ropes or stripes or something, so that and the horses are trained to stay in this track, so they never supposed to turn. And so they, all you have to do is, put them to gallop, and then when they approach a target, you leave the reins and you just start, shooting your arrows. And that's how it's done anywhere: Hungary, Korea, Turkey, and all the other countries, United States, United Kingdom, Eastern Europe, China, and etc. Japan. But when you think about the combat use of it, it's not so simple, because you are fighting in an open field and you can't put ropes and create these perfect trails measured so that you can you get enough time to release an arrow every 30 meters, and you release 3 arrows to shoot a target from 3 positions. None of it would work in a real combat situation. So how did they do it? We don't know for sure. And one of the or at least few sources mentioned that they were probably somehow somehow trained their horses from the young age to react to pressure of their knees. In other words, they would control them with their knees or their feet, some kind of use of your lower limbs to control a horse. Because really, imagine if you could do that. I mean, if you ever tried to shoot from a horseback, if you're a horseback archer like myself, you obviously know that if you could control your horse with your legs, that would be such a tremendous help. Because right now you start your run, you put your horse to a gallop, then you throw the reins, you shoot an arrow, and then you have to pick it up at the end of the trail. You have to stop your horse or turn him or her if you're going in circle, and etc. So back then, somehow they knew how to do it without all these aids, and that kind of makes you understand and pay the respect to this art, because it's not just perfect archery skills, it's not just perfect riding skills, but it's also this unique specialty of horseback archery without specially prepared fields. And that's what they could do back in the day, and that's what almost none of us could do these days. So we kind of do this chopped down, simplified version of it, and they could do it anywhere they wanted. Complete freedom. Another big challenge, of course, anyone faces is that we have to shoot in a motion, and the motion is we're moving, our horse is moving, we're moving on top of a horse, and also the enemy is moving. You know, because today we shoot at static standing targets, and they don't move, they don't run, they don't shoot back, they don't throw javelins in your face. They're just standing there, and you practice as many times as you can, and then just to get these 3 perfect shots. But imagine that in the conditions that I explained, your horse is moving differently every time. The enemy is changing position, trying to evade or counterattack or something, and it just adds a whole new depth of difficulty to a real combat archery, as opposed to what we practice today and call horseback archery. And another one, of course, is that you would have to shoot different trajectories in a real combat situation. For example, right now we usually shoot at direct trajectory. In other words, our bows are powerful enough to shoot straight, so we don't have to, you know, overcompensate and whatnot. Very rarely you see someone shooting, you know, 60, 40, 50, 100 meters off a horseback. Usually it's 20, 30 meters, and that's even difficult enough. But they would use it differently. They would use artillery, archery, shooting at ballistic trajectory. They would shoot directly. They would shoot in all kind of positions and situations, and they have to master all that because their lives depended on it. And another one, of course, is a famous Parthian shot, when you shoot backwards. I also have the I also have a similar semantic issue with this name Parthian shot, because again, it's the situation of apple and apple tree that I explained earlier, or seeing the tip of the iceberg and just thinking that this is it, that's all of it. I mean, Parthians, perfect, great archers, representatives of huge body of horseback archers all over Eurasia, and they all used this Parthian shot technique, and they've done it even before Parthians existed, before Parthia was formed. The Saka, the Scythians used it, probably the Cimmerians used it. So why we call it Parthian shot? It's again this Eurocentric perspective, Eurocentric angle, labeling everything the way it appears in relationship to Europe. At that time it was the Romans. They were fighting with Parthians, and Parthians used this millennia-old technique, and the Romans assumed that this is a Parthian thing exclusively, and that's how it stuck in the history. Even though when Greeks fought with Saka, with Scythians, they probably too used the same technique. So why not call it Scythian shot or Cimmerian shot, or, you know, something, some other name, or just, I don't know, nomadic rearwards shot or something. And because all nomads used it, it's, you know, back then we didn't separate by nations. We didn't have passports. Oh, I'm Mongol and I'm Kipchak. Oh, I'm Seljuk, and, you know, nice to meet you. It says in my passport my nationality. No, it was all the tribes. They traveled everywhere they wanted or needed to. They changed rulers, they changed territories, They went from their place of origin 1,000 miles and ended up, somewhere else. Started in Altai Mountains or northern China and ended up in Western or Eastern Europe or Syria or somewhere else. I don't know. And they all used the same techniques for millennia. Uh, the Parthian shot probably appeared as early as horseback archery itself, and it existed till the end of it in 19th and early 20th century. And they always used this kind of shot, rearward shot. So in that respect, any nation, any nomadic nation can claim it. We can call it Bashkir shot or Kazakh shot, Mongol shot, Turkmen shot, Karakalpak shot, Kalmyk shot, any kind of shot. So why Parthian? It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyways, the name stuck. I'm using it in my book. Complaining a little bit about it, but it is what it is. That's another one that we all should master. It is also worth mentioning that shooting rearwards, I'm sure all the horseback practitioners know about it. When you shoot forward and you have to shoot to your right, meaning that the horse's head is here and you have to twist this way, it becomes very awkward to shoot this way. And maybe that's why here you would rather switch hands so that you can do 360. And this way, yeah, you're just very, very deadly. You can shoot at any angle, at any distance. Another thing that's worth mentioning is the name of sharpshooters or snipers, archer snipers in our region, among the Kazakhs and probably the other related our kin nomads. We use the name mergen to describe a sharpshooter, and that's very interesting because all the sources describe nomadic archers as exceptional archers, that they shoot faster, further, stronger, more accurately than all of the saddled neighbors, which we call sarts. The Persians, the Chinese, the Russians, the Europeans, and etc. Now imagine that among the already superior archers, there were extraordinary archers, snipers among snipers, and they were called mergen. And that's kind of puts this thing into even more perspective, that there could be even more advanced level of archery than just nomadic horseback archery. But at the same time, we should say that in my opinion, archery, traditional archery, its accuracy is strongly exaggerated in literature, in fiction, in films, in the movies, because I know our limits, of modern archers' limits. I know our champions of Kazakhstan, and I know how they shoot, and I know the limits of their accuracy, of their efficiency, and it's nowhere near what's described in the fiction or in the media. It's pretty limited. And even if we assume that the archers of the past, they trained since the childhood and they were so much better than us, and they practiced it day and night, and maybe they were 2, 3, 4 times better than us, it's still not anywhere near what's sometimes described in the books or in fiction. hitting a target at a distance over 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters. That's just, at least for me, it's very hard to imagine. Even if I give it, the training, like I said, from the childhood, the conditioning and the sharper vision that's often mentioned, and apparently it's a real thing. The sort of telescopic vision of the plains, of the people who live in the plains, they could see a few miles further than the than the city dwellers, than the farmers and etc. Even if we take all that into consideration, if you ever shot traditional bow without bow shelf, without aiming devices, without counterweight, and knowing the imperfections of even the best arrows, it's just really hard to imagine that somebody could hit something at these kind of distances accurately. But who knows? We just this level is practically unachievable among us in our time. But maybe it was achievable back then. Who knows? But I'm still skeptical. And another one that worth mentioning is how hunting and warfare were related in nomadic societies. One of my favorite authors, a Kazakh historian, Aybolat Kushkumbayev, he wrote this book, The Military Art of Kazakhs in 17th, 18th centuries. And he wrote something that I also wrote from other sources, that nomadic warfare, nomadic tactics and strategy evolved directly from hunting. And the way nomads hunted was that they gathered in large groups. They would chase the animals, form a giant circle, and that circle would get smaller and smaller as the riders, approaching towards the center of it. It gets tighter. The animals run away, and then finally they kind of push all these animals into this designated area in the middle, and then the nobility would start shooting first, and then all others would join in, and it was a massive hunt with lots and lots of prey, with lots and lots of killings, and it would it would provide so much food, for days or for weeks, and also it would serve as a military exercise for the nomads. And this is how it was used as military training, because this is how they would separate them into the same units as later would be used in war, in terms of chain of commandment, coordination, superiors, and etc. And during these exercises, the hunting party would be split into two wings, right wing and left wing. And anyone who is familiar with history of nomads, their warfare, knows that this is how they fought on the battlefields. Left wing, right wing. Often they added center, avant-garde, rear guard, and etc. But left and right wing is universal. It comes from very, very old times, and it originates in these collective hunting exercises. So thank you for staying with me, and see you in the next one. Thank you.